This week on Quality Digest Live, we'll chat with Davis Balistracci about changing attitudes among quality professionals.
Plus, following cell phones from cradle to grave. That and more when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is sponsored by Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon carries the widest range of quality brands. With its extensive support network, Hexagon is also your partner. Hexagon Metrology. We are metrology.
Welcome back to Quality Digest Live for January 30th, 2015. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Dirk Ducharme, Editor-in-Chief of Quality Digest.
Yes, he is, and I'm Quality Digest publisher Mike Richmond. All right, well, we start this week with a challenging article from Gallup CEO Jim Clifton, titled U.S. Entrepreneurship, Dead or Alive? The piece ran in yesterday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. You can see it right there. Well, as Clifton points out in this article, for several years now, U.S. companies have been dying out more quickly than they're being born. In fact, according to the U.S. Census Bureau, by way of the Small Business Administration, 70,000 more companies went out of business than started up in 2011, the most recent year for which data are available. And I think we actually have a slide which shows some of those numbers and the upwards and downwards motion. You can see there that this axes cross there, Dirk, I think in around the year 2010, where you have the companies being born, the companies being going away, dying essentially, kind of crossing right there. Now, net of 70,000 fewer companies that are alive because of this, right? A big number. Now, obviously, this is a concern for anyone interested in the success of the U.S. economy. For Clifton, part of the problem is that the U.S. system of commerce has become overly reliant on innovation as a cure-all. What's needed instead, in his opinion, is entrepreneurship, the ability to take a great idea and make it work as the basis for a company that will succeed in the long term. And of course, what that means is not only developing and refining great ideas into great products, but cultivating markets, finding customers, and managing growth. All that, of course, involves generating the kinds of creative and exciting jobs that are the engine for economic growth wherever you are, really. And when you look at this, Dirk, and you look at the article and you read what Jim Clifton is talking about here, you understand how important small businesses are to the U.S. economy, right? The majority of U.S. workers work in small companies.
Yeah, about, what, 95%?
Not quite that many, but a big percentage of people work in small companies, less than 100 people. And those are the companies that really are struggling with this idea of staying alive. I mean, there's a lot of pressures on small companies. We know we're working for a small company here. And I mean, things like the Affordable Health Care Act, right? I mean, that really affects small companies in a big way, and those additional costs can really affect what a company can do in terms of competing. So the idea that Jim's talking about here is that you want to be able to support entrepreneurship, help people start companies, right? If people do get laid off from a small company, let's say, what are we doing to help them start their own company, right? That's the best way to replace that. If you look at clear cutting a forest, you want to plant new trees when you're doing that, right? I mean, you want to have the next generation of jobs growing from maybe jobs that are going away. And this is a really important issue. I mean, as Jim talks about in his piece here, I mean, this is one of the highest priority security issues in the country right now is the economic growth and jobs. And I think that's really, really important that Gallup is looking at this and thinking about it from the perspective of how are we going to make sure that we have jobs and create jobs for people now and in the future.
And supporting entrepreneurship, right?
Supporting entrepreneurship, really, really key issue here that Gallup's talking about here.
Well, interestingly enough, in a somewhat related article, because this one has to do with education and maybe what employers are looking for. The Association of American Colleges and Universities has released a report by Hart Research Associates titled Falling Short: College, Learning, and Career Success. The report summarizes selected findings from two different national surveys, one of business and nonprofit leaders and another of current college students. Consistent with findings from 5 earlier surveys commissioned by the association, employers overwhelmingly endorse broad learning and cross-cutting skills as the best preparation for long-term career success. What interested us is where employers felt graduating students fell short. You would think they would be most interested in graduating students' knowledge within his or her major, right? But according to the study, when hiring recent college graduates, employers place the greatest priority on a demonstrated proficiency in skills and knowledge that cut across majors. Now, we've talked about, in the past, we've talked about, the skills gap, and it's kind of taken for granted by employers that there is kind of this skills gap, that they are looking for certain technical skills. But apparently what this is saying is that skills aside, they're looking for some other things that really aren't necessarily skills within that person's major. So for instance, of 17 outcome areas tested, written and oral, communication skills, teamwork skills, ethical decision making, critical thinking, and the ability to apply knowledge in real-world situations are the most highly valued by employers. And get this, nearly all employers surveyed said that a demonstrated capacity to think critically, communicate clearly, and solve complex problems is more important than a candidate's undergraduate major.
Absolutely.
Think about it. And I think the assumption here is that, hey, we can see that you've got a degree in chemical engineering, for instance. So we can assume that you know your stuff.
There's a baseline of
There's
knowledge.
a baseline,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So, okay, you got your chemical engineering degree, okay, fine. But the real question is, what else have you got? Can you work in a team? Do you have skills outside of chemical engineering? Do you understand the chemical manufacturing process? It's one thing to design a process on paper. It's another thing to design a process that is actually supportable and sustainable and easy to produce out in the actual process floor, right? And that's one thing they want to know about is what are your cross-cutting skills? So one solution suggested by employers, and I like this, is that a greater emphasis be made on applied learning. They believe, a lot of employers believe, that requiring students to complete a significant applied learning project would improve the quality of their preparation for career success. 87% agree that they are somewhat or much more likely to hire a college graduate if she or he had completed a senior project while in college. 60% agree that all students should be expected to complete a significant applied learning project before graduating from college. And nearly all employers surveyed, 96%, agree that regardless of a student's major, all students should have educational experiences that teach them how to solve problems with people whose views are different than their own.
Yeah, working on a team.
Working on a team.
Really important
you got to be
stuff.
able to do it.
Well, whatever you do in life, you bring yourself with you, right? I mean, and what employers want to know is when you bring yourself with you and all the skills you have, that you have skills other than just the things you can write down and that you can prove. You want to be able to interact with people, like you're saying. You want to be able to work on a team.
And by the way, this ties in with your article, I think, too, is there are schools or programs that are teaching entrepreneurship, for lack of a better word. And entrepreneurship really, more than anything, does require cross-cutting skills.
Yeah.
I think the best entrepreneurs are not those who are super narrowly focused. Yes. They're those people who understand business, they understand the technical aspect of whatever type of company they're trying to start. They understand a lot of all the environment, the management and work environment that goes around the company that they're trying to build.
Yeah.
And that is a good part of entrepreneurship.
I mean, to me, the greatest example of that is Steve Jobs. It's
Sure,
always going to be
there you
Steve Jobs. I mean, the guy was obviously had the technical chops to do it, but really his greatness, his genius was the ability to make that company work as a company and communicate. Yeah, good stuff there. All right, well, thanks, Dirk. All right, we have an interview now for you with longtime QD contributor Davis Balistracci. Davis's article, A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to Quality Improvement, ran in Wednesday's issue of Quality Digest Daily. As always, this column from Davis is densely packed with information and observations using, as a point of departure, his vantage as a presenter at the Institute for Healthcare Improvement's annual Forum on Quality. The most recent IHI Forum occurred just a few weeks ago in December. This was Davis's 21st consecutive year presenting in that forum, so he's certainly got a great perspective on the changes in the composition of this specific audience, as well as the quality profession in general over that course of time. So, to chat about what he's learned and how that knowledge has affected his teaching and consulting practice, we're very pleased now to be joined by the man himself, Davis Balistracci. Welcome, Davis.
Hello, gents.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
So it's snowing out there.
Yeah.
Sorry,
we're in California.
Yeah.
Well, all right, and you were in Hawaii, so let's. You were out in the IHI recently, so let's get right into it. Now, you were there when you're presenting to an audience such as the one at the IHI, the most important thing is to stuff them full of tools, right?
Yeah, it works for me.
That's what I used to think 20 years ago, when I was just starting to learn things. And as I've evolved, I'm just amazed at how few tools you need and how I'm still amazed at the awesome power of just plotting data over time and then intelligently asking questions as a result. In other words, applying critical thinking. Some researchers, in fact, there was a book back in the late 80s called Total Quality, an Executive's Guide for the 90s, which still has one of the best roadmaps I've ever seen. And it said to get an effective program off the ground, you only need 10 to 20% of the culture trained in quality tools, and you only need 1 to 2% of people trained in advanced quality tools. And as time goes on, I believe that more and more. As you saw in my article, I think what Deming did too is he evolved over his 50 years, because he was always accused of not teaching any tools.
Well, if I can jump in here a little bit. You touched, just a second ago, you said something about critical thinking. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is that the ability to think critically may be more important than most of the tools that you might be taught as a beginner, neophyte, quality engineer or quality manager.
Well, even one of your longtime columnists and my very respected colleague Don Wheeler says in the case of control charts, the purpose isn't to have charts, the purpose is to use the charts. He said calculating the right number without knowing what to do with it is worthless. And I'm using a saying increasingly in my work. I teach a mindset, not a tool set. It's funny, once you understand the mindset, the tools to use become obvious and simpler. Whereas I see all these charts saying, use this tool in this situation. It's like ticking boxes. It just, it's the old Steve Allen thing. Mr. Allen, do they get your show in Philadelphia? He said, well, they see it, but they don't get it.
Well, Davis, one thing I liked about your article, it taught me a little bit. I did a little research on this. You referred to Everett Rogers' diffusion of innovations theory to explain the changing attitudes of the attendees, say, as an example, of the IHI forum over the years. So how do improvement professionals who were innovators or early adopters in the past differ, in your opinion, from those who are now just kind of joining what's known as the late majority?
Well, it was sort of the blind leading the blind, but, we were a tenth of a step ahead of the participants. There was a passion, there was a buzz, there was a collegiality, there was respect for anyone who had knowledge. It was new, it was exciting. And, over time, as happened with quality and manufacturing, remember there was a renaissance with Deming in the 80s. There's this big renaissance, then all of a sudden it goes from being a passion to being a sub-industry, and going from being a passion where you're sort of a maverick fighting against the tide, where, all right, we need a quality department. Or I'm going to chuckle a bit, as I see happen in manufacturing now, I see it in healthcare. Hey, you don't know what to do with someone? Put them in quality. I mean, it's becoming a job, and it's just amazing how many people are there, and they're new, and they just want to take it in. And in fact, I am one of the longtime presenters. There aren't very many others. There are a few. And a lot of the innovators, et cetera, have disappeared. I don't know if they've retired or, it's bigger than all of us. I just don't know. It's just been interesting to watch. And then when they got savvy with I think it's a blessing and a curse, that 100,000 Lives campaign, the link is in the article. All of a sudden, and the perfect storm convergence of these horrible events now getting wide publicity and the customer not standing for it and CEOs under pressure. And people were joining it and they were saying, oh my God, look at the excitement. No, I think it's better. We better join this or we're not going to look good, because the day after they announced it as successful, I was literally giving a presentation to the Michigan Hospital Association the day after they announced its success. And I had 40 hospitals represented in the room. And I said to them, how many of you were participating in this 100,000 Lives campaign? ton of hands went up. I said, so what was your executive's involvement? No hands. And one woman raised her hand and said, they were nowhere to be seen during it except cajoling us for results. But when it was time to celebrate, they were all on the plane to Atlanta ready to sip champagne. And I still see the whole thing. Healthcare has caught up to manufacturing. The CEOs now have the platitudes down. As Jim Clemmer calls it, it's passionate lip service. But don't let it get too much in the way of the real work.
Hey, Davis, just really quickly before we let you go, you said something that kind of caught my interest here. A thing that Mike and I have been talking about a little bit is there don't seem to be quality gurus around anymore. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, people could go through and say, there's well, not necessarily quality, but there were management and quality management gurus who people were always talking about. Maybe there was Coven or, Stephen Covey or Ken Blanchard.
Duran was right.
Duran, people were still talking a lot about Deming. And that is really kind of it seems to me, gone by the wayside. Is it just because quality is, in your opinion, because quality is kind of so infused in the mindset now of management that it doesn't seem novel anymore?
Yeah, it's hardened. It's hardened into a sub-industry. And what I think is happening is a lot of Deming's brilliance is coming home to roost now. All the current programs are showing various manifestations of Deming, but quality is still seen as something you bolt onto culture. Where I'm trying to see, I think I'm finally starting to get what Deming said. I want to build it into the culture, and using Deming's original premise by understanding variation. Simple. And yet the resistance I get from execs is fierce, all capital letters. In fact, I want to tell people, refer to I think it's my October 2006 SPC column, where I have a dialogue with a world leader in quality, who's still a world leader in quality. And he doesn't get it. Well, he saw it, but he didn't get it.
Well, Davis, I want to thank you for joining us. You have a book out. We want to make sure we mention that.
Yes.
Why don't you talk a little bit about your book and your release of that?
Well, it's new edition of my Data Sanity, where I've put in my 20 years of synthesizing Deming theory. I mean, I think I've synthesized it into a unique leadership package. I've designed it for execs and quality practitioners to create dialogue. In fact, the second chapter is 8 scenarios, which would be considered everyday scenarios for managers, to show the time they're wasting for poor use of data. In fact, Lean should look at poor use of data as a process, because it's 50% of executives' time, an hour a day of middle managers' time, poring over useless operational reports, 60% of which are waste. Now, what could be done with that? And they draw circles and ask for explanations from busy frontline people. More wasted time.
And Davis, we're going to have a couple, just for our readers, if they follow the link to Davis's article below the player page. It's not there right now, but it will be shortly after the show. There'll be a link to a couple of excerpts from your book, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay,
That's right.
well, we'll get that in there and you'll send that to us.
That's right.
So Davis Balistracci, author of Data Sanity, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you, gents.
Enjoy the snow.
We'll talk to you soon, Davis. Bye.
Time to shovel.
Right. See you. All right. Okay. We make about 1 billion cell phones a year. Can you believe that? 1 billion cell phones a year.
I don't.
There are, at any one time, depending on who you talk to, about 6 billion active cell phones out there. And the population of the Earth is what?
7.1 billion.
7.1 million.
So
billion.
just about one per person.
Just about one per person.
Wow.
As Taryn March points out in her article, Hello, Goodbye, and Mining for Green Gold, cell phones are the poster children for products with really illogical life cycles. The average person gets a new cell phone about every 18 months. Not usually because their current cell phone doesn't work any longer or can't run the latest app. It's because we want the latest and greatest. So we toss or turn off, or turn in, I should say, return, or put our electronic BFF into a drawer and get ourselves a newer, younger, shinier BFF.
Wow.
So where are all those discarded cell phones going? Well, that's a great question. Sometimes nowhere, our sock drawer. Sometimes they're turned back into the cell phone store where they might be given out to women's shelters and that sort of thing. That's a great thing. Sometimes, unfortunately, and very often, they end up in landfills or sent overseas to have parts reclaimed in a most unhealthy way, as we've covered on the show before.
Most unhealthy, yes.
So what do you do? Well, there are several laws in place that help mitigate this e-waste, mostly in the EU. Laws like Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment, WEEE, or RoHS, which restricts the use of hazardous substances in electronic equipment. But these methods really, they're only a mitigation. They aren't a solution to the problem. They aren't lean. We are the problem. I mean, we, the consumer. As consumers, we always want to see something new and sparkly, so the manufacturers, of course, oblige. Demand, right?
That's
we
what
say
they
we
do.
want something sparkly. They'll send us and they'll crank out a new project, a new product every 3 months or 6 months. Cellular companies talking about cell phones, they're part of the problem because they will extend your contract for 2 years if you get a brand new phone, which very often is either free or at least a fraction of the cost of what it would be if you bought it new. So why not, right?
Why not? Yeah.
So this is the antithesis of lean. What we should be doing is keeping our phone or other electronics, our flat screen TV, really, until we just can't use them anymore, or until perhaps the functionality has waned to the point where we really can't use them anymore. And that does happen. Manufacturers could put out a new product, let's say, every year instead of every 3 months. Cellular providers could charge more for updates. There are ways to slow down the waste stream. The problem of looking for an alternative, I think, rather than addressing the real issue, our desire, is rampant in our society. Well, I was going to say the Western world, but really it's look at China too. A lot of cell phone users, a lot of electronics users. The same idea goes for alternative energy. Are there more efficient energy sources than petroleum? Sure. But the real issue is we want to have the same size house, we want to have the same number of devices in our house, we want to have a car that has the same horsepower and goes just as fast. We want to be able to change our electronic devices on a whim. So this really should start with us. This really should be up to us as the consumer to be saying, we're going to keep our products longer. Yeah. We're going to move closer to work so that we don't have to commute, 50 miles. We need to be using less energy. We need to be decreasing our own footprint. Now, we're going to be talking to a guest here pretty soon, Mike McElwright. He's going to talk a little bit about lean, and everybody's going to be on board with it, right? They're going to, lean and manufacturing. Yeah, our office, our workspace, our manufacturing. That's got to be lean, man. And then we walk out the door, hop into our Ford F-250, drive 50 miles home, sit down in front of our 60-inch plasma screen.
Or drive 5 miles home, or 3 miles home where you could have rode a bike,
or
right?
You could have ridden a bike,
right.
exactly. Right. And so lean goes out the window once we walk out the door.
Yeah.
Just something to think about.
It's really interesting. It's a really great story. Actually, we're talking about this theme this whole month, actually, is this idea of the product life cycle. Really, really interesting stuff. Taryn did a great job on that article, I think, so check it out. As always, all of the articles that we're talking about on the show are right underneath the landing page right down there. Okay, well, we have a guest, as Dirk just alluded to. We have a rare treat for you to close the show this week. We have a guest in the studio, our good friend Mike McElwright's in town, and he's here to shoot the latest episodes of his training series, Creating and Sustaining Lean Improvements. That's the video training series that's available only through our sister company's website, 360 Performance Circle, 360performancecircle.com. Now, Mike's latest article for us called Lean Tools Are Ideal for Product Lifecycle Management ran last week in Quality Digest Daily, and it addressed, as we just were talking about, the theme for our month, which is, of course, the product lifecycle and how issues of the product lifecycle affect quality and vice versa. So, to join us now to chat about this topic and a lot more, we're very pleased now to be joined by our very own Mike McElwright. Mike, thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Right.
Yeah, it's good to have you here. Well, you're a lean guy. You actually
are a lot leaner than you used to be.
That's right.
You lost some weight.
I am. I like to say that I got rid of some overproduction and lost some inventory, but it was at the expense of a lot of transportation on the treadmill.
So there you go.
That's right. Good stuff there. Well, so you're a lean guy. I think that you're well known. You adapt lean principles in your work life, and you help people understand how to do that, and in your personal life too, as we just heard. But really, when you look at the product lifecycle, I think it's a great application for lean, and it's one that people don't maybe think about as much. But I think it's one that we all can agree is really important to bring those disciplines to the product lifecycle. Wouldn't you say that's true?
Yes, absolutely. Of course. You know, I mean, when you think about, first of all, let's look at the beginning of the product lifecycle, the design process. And of course, it is a process. And lean, of course, one of the key principles is all about being process focused. Focus on the process, not departments, not metrics, but primarily on the process. So as such, the design process is a process, and it is riddled with waste. And it's riddled with waste because no one really ever watches it. No one looks at the process itself or studies it. It's not like going out to a manufacturing floor and watching widgets being created. We don't tend to watch the process itself of design. So as such, there's so much waste. There's a company that I did some work for some time ago where we did a value stream map of the design process, and we found over 180 handoffs of a design, average. So handing off from one department or person to another person, and every time there's a handoff, of course, there's an opportunity for a problem. Waste buildup, errors being made, documents being lost, whatever. So it's riddled with waste. And so what we need to do is of course, look at the design process holistically, but then look at the entire process. So when we talk about life cycle, again, lean is about being process focused. Well, we want to look at the process of the product, the living product until death, okay? So the product is designed in someone's head, it's created, and then it's produced, and then it goes to the consumer, and then it finally goes to its final burial spot, whatever that is. A person within an organization has to look at the entire process and has to be focused on the entire process. Now, if an organization has some kind of commitment to the environment, to make sure that they're environmentally responsible, and they throw away a product that hurts or harms the environment, then in my mind that's a defect. They've just created a defect because it goes against their own policies of being environmentally focused. And so we have to look at that. So as a defect, it's waste, and waste we should get rid of. And we have to look at it throughout the entire life cycle. So, you know, now one thing that you see sometimes is, you know, you see an organization, and I've seen this many times, where design engineers are still not allowed onto the production floor because their focus is, they're told that their focus is to create designs.
Right.
Spit out designs as much as possible.
Yeah, never mind what those other guys are doing. Yeah.
Never mind,
Yeah.
right. And so, and how silly that is. That's so anti-lean. In fact, I call it fake lean.
Fake lean.
It's really fake lean because, yeah, we're only going to practice lean, you know, in the manufacturing area. We'll do a couple things here. We're a lean organization. Well, that's not true. A true lean organization is process focused, and that means someone is responsible for the entire product line all the way through from creation to death.
Let's back up a little bit. One thing that kind of struck me is when you mentioned one of the silos is the design silo, right? And it goes from the design silo over into the manufacturing silo in a company that really isn't run properly. How does all this tie into maybe, let's say, risk or risk management? I mean, I would assume there's got to be a connection between what you're talking about and the real hot topic right now, which is risk. I mean, they would seem to go hand in hand to me.
Absolutely, and they do. And you know, so what an organization should do is of course manage the risk. That's what risk management is.
Sure.
You have to manage it. Okay, so that doesn't mean I just do an FMEA. There's a whole management process to make sure that it's all systemic within the organization, and there is a way to constantly monitor and reduce risk along the way. So oftentimes an organization might, let's say for a design project, since that's what we're talking about, risks are of course highest at the very beginning when you identify all the risks, and there's so many questions to be answered. And with time, obviously we should be decreasing all of our risks, but we have to identify those risks, perhaps quantify those risks, and have bogeys or targets along the way to continuously hit those points so we make decisions, wise decisions. Do we move on from here or not? And so risk management is an entire process to focus us in on how to reduce the risk of certain products and processes along the way. So, and obviously, as you said, it's a hot topic. A lot of the standards, aerospace standard, the medical device standard, have been addressing risk management for quite some time. But now ISO 9001, as so many people know, will be coming out later this year, and it's addressing risk management. So it's kind of scary for some people. But really, in reality, we should have been doing this all along.
Right,
I mean, it's when you think about, well, what's a preventive action? Well, a preventive action is simply an action that you take after you have identified potential problems. Oh, you mean like risks?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And so it's really just the next step up. It's a good step. It's a positive step, in my opinion. But now we're using the terms risk management. The other thing that's going to be key is we have to look at it, again, holistically. So risk management for a certain product, but also for projects, but also at the strategic level. What are those opportunities? What are those strengths? What are those threats out there? What are those risks out there? And how do we mitigate those risks? Monitor them, take action to get rid of those risks, decrease them.
Let me ask you the same question kind of we asked Davis just a while ago.
Okay.
Again, based on a conversation Mike and I had a while ago, you've been in this business for a long time. Is the impression to you that we've kind of lost sight of the quality gurus of the past and the lesson? I mean, you're a big Deming fan. I mean, are we kind of ignoring those lessons? I mean, basically the same question I asked Davis. What's happening with this always on the tip of our tongue, Deming, Juran, all these other greats that we've talked about in the past?
Well, I've often said that we have to make quality cool again. And it's lost some of its swagger. It's lost some of its coolness.
That it had in the mid to late 70s. That sort of thing.
Yes. But of course, at that point, in the mid to late 70s and into the 80s, we were desperate because we were losing market share, and so quality became cool by nature. Yeah. So we've perhaps lost the coolness there. Now, is it still there? Absolutely. It's still prevalent. It's still important. It's just more of a commodity, you might say. It's become more of a commodity.
Which could be a good thing, though.
Well, yes, it could be a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think we lose sometimes our focus and our opportunities to further improve and set ourselves apart from others.
Right.
So there's still opportunities. It's just that it's almost a given now, and it's almost a given, and that's only in some industries. Right. I mean, obviously there are some industries, service industries, et cetera. Quality should be at the top of the priority list, and so we need to. So I think it's still there. All the knowledge about quality and lean, so much of it's been around for a long time. Sometimes it comes out in new forms, new books, and so forth. But the basics are there, and I think we kind of use them. And it also has morphed. As I said, a lot of quality, the quality aspects, the quality philosophies have morphed into what we now call lean.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, see, to me, I mean, thinking about Deming and his great book Out of the Crisis, which was really the idea that began this whole thing with his prevalence in the 70s, as Dirk talked about. And you wrote a book, I believe, called Out of Another such and such crisis. But the
not
idea
quite as popular.
Not quite popular. But the idea that it takes crises, that it's really kind of firefighting if you think about it. I mean, you want to get beyond crises. You want to get beyond continual improvement into continuous improvement, right? You want to just make this the water you swim in, the way you do business, right?
Yeah.
I would think.
And you mentioned Stephen Covey before. You were talking about Stephen Covey, one of the great business gurus, and he gave us the time management matrix, and it was basically a way to think differently and move us away from crisis by management to prevention management,
right?
And doing things like FMEAs or risk management, spending more time on risk management. Mm-hmm. So again, it's been around for a long time, but now it's going to be part of the standard, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, great.
Okay, well
thanks, Mike. I know you were here doing some great video work with us, and you can all look forward to a lot of that video work coming out really quickly here on 360 PC. 360performancecircle.com, our sister website, so make sure you check that out. Coming up very, very soon. We're going to be filling your inbox with some information about that coming up here real soon as well.
That's right.
So
okay, well, that is actually the end of our show today.
That is our show for the day. That's right. Thank you all for joining us, and we want to wish you all a great weekend. Thank you, Mike, for joining us. Thank you, Davis Balstracci, for being here, for joining us via Skype. Everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.
Actually, we should thank our sponsor as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. But what am I thinking? Yes, this sponsor. Can't forget about that. We'd like to offer thanks to today's sponsor, Hexagon Metrology. Hexagon Metrology is committed to helping you control your processes, enhance the quality of your products, and increase efficiencies. They empower you to stay one step ahead of a changing world with their wide range of product offerings, nearly 200 years of expertise, and an extensive support network. Hexagon Metrology, where quality comes together. For more information, just click on the banner ad just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
That's right. Now we can keep the lights on. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks for all of you for joining us. Mike, thanks for
Thank you, Dirk.
joining us on the show.
That's right.
And Davis Baldastracci as well.
That's right.
And be sure to check out the videos that are going to be coming up from Mike and also Davis's book, Data Sanity, the latest release of that.
That's right.
Thanks to all of you for joining us, and have a great weekend.
We'll see you next week.
Yep.
Bye.
Four, three, two, one, fire.